Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to discuss a very serious topic, specifically the way dog ownership is detrimental to families. There are many layers to this, and I will actually cover several topics. These will include systematic or planned depopulation efforts, the child-free movement, and anti-natalism. Also of relevance are phenomena such as technological unemployment and resource scarcity, which are both aspects of global capitalism. I will briefly outline a few of these and explore how they may be linked to dog ownership and to what extent. I will also explain how the presence of dogs is, in fact, destroying families in nations such as the United States, regardless of whether or not it is linked to any of these aforementioned topics. First, there is this idea of a depopulation agenda and to what extent the presence of dogs in extant society may or may not play a role in that. More on that a little later. In a world where dog culture is extremely mainstream, it is difficult not to get disillusioned about the prospects of achieving a dog-free society. But we must not be silent. This online activism is the least we can do. Myself, I feel I have reached a peak, a plateau of sorts. Usually this term is used with reference to dieting or fitness goals, but it basically means to stop progressing after a period of improvement. It can also mean to reach a level of maximum attainment. I've made several posts about some of the ways in which this manifests, so I won't belabor the point. However, I will say that, from my end, it is clear that something is definitely off as of late. It doesn't help that there are bad faith actors in this space to contend with as well, which brings us to the next order of business. Now, this is not going to be a takedown video or anything, and I am not only referring to one individual. Most of these are regulars, and they do in fact troll these channels. As an example, there is one particularly vocal individual who posts regularly on the I Hate Dogs channel. I have seen this individual refer to I Hate Dogs as controlled opposition in the past, and more recently this same individual said that the entire anti-dog movement is, which is about as ridiculous and batshit a claim as one can make. Next item, I myself made a video a long time ago explaining at some length why I personally do not discuss politics too much on my channel. I do tackle or address these subjects from time to time on my community page, or at least I have in the past. And I'm not really opposed to open discussions in the comment sections, although I could easily see that going off the rails very quickly. Hence, while it is not strictly prohibited, it is not strongly recommended. However, I don't generally make it a habit to make off-topic videos, and I don't arbitrarily inject my own biases into my anti-dog content every chance I get. In point of fact, I have made hundreds of videos, and most of them make no reference to, say, capitalism, for instance. Although, to be certain, there is a lot I could actually say on the topic. And I want to be very clear about what I mean when I say I don't discuss politics. I am not saying it can never be discussed, and as I pointed out myself before, this movement itself is inherently political. What I mean is, you are not going to see me trashing things I have a personal bias against just for the sake of it. If I mention that there is a demonstrable link between dog nuttery and the profit motive, however, just as one example, it's not because I have something against the profit motive, although I do think it objectively results in many undesirable outcomes. The reason I talk about it, however, is because it is relevant, and there is, in fact, a connection there. Another thing I won't spend too much time going over, but which I do feel is important to address, is the frustration I've experienced in this space, specifically with regard to arguing with fellow crusaders about these ridiculous pet topics. One example is anti-natalism, and what I have observed here is that many people in this space have a major hard-on for this ideology. They want to hate it, even though they often demonstrate a lack of understanding of what it actually entails. And guys, just because you dislike the sound of something does not mean it is automatically related to dog culture. Now I get it. There is a strong anti-child, and really, anti-human sentiment that's prevalent in dog culture, but that has absolutely fuck all to do with this specific philosophy. I think a lot of people are referring to misanthropy, but calling it anti-natalism. And I understand how this might be a confusion people have. What I do not get is when people insist on their own personal definition, even when they are provided the relevant information for their edification. Now, bear with me here. We're going to get to that other stuff in a minute, but this is simply not a black and white thing here. It has been exasperating, trying to explain why antinatalism simply isn't the boogeyman many make it out to be. I should also add here that antinatalism is not an inherently anti-human ideology. It is against human suffering, because suffering is bad for humans. Its logical conclusion is something known as ethilism, which I will not get too into here. Now, is it extreme? Most people will say yes. Are most people going to readily adopt it? Of course not. Which is why I personally do not believe it is the threat many seem to assume it is. Because, to be very clear, antinatalism is not about advocating suicide or genocide or anything of the kind. I have seen these ridiculous strawman attacks before. Main point being, it is a rather extreme idea that isn't likely to take root, and it does have a certain logic to it. You don't have to agree with it. In fact, I expect that most people won't. I personally do not advocate for this, although I once did. I'm honestly rather ambivalent about it. To be perfectly honest, I'm not even sure if that's the right word. On the one hand, I do find its logic unassailable. But on the other hand, there is something about it which I can't quite put a finger on that doesn't sit well with me. And just think about it for 2 seconds. The goal of antinatalism is voluntary human extinction. Dog culture needs humans around to peddle dogs too. I know it can seem like dogs are part of a broader agenda to depopulate the planet or something, but I don't know if there is evidence to support that. Now, don't get me wrong, I can see how such an agenda would perfectly match up with dog culture if it were in place, but I don't think dogs exist specifically to depopulate the planet. Dogs are simply very profitable, and that is why they are pushed in a commercial context. Dogs have been around for some time now, and, at least in the United States, birth rates have been declining since the Great Recession in 2008. The decline has been gradual but consistent and has resulted in the lowest birth rates in decades. Main point being, it is relatively very recent. And if dogs are being used as part of such an agenda, then they are playing a very long game. I personally believe the reality is even more sinister than what would be implied if there was a clear answer to the question of whether or not these things are explicitly linked together. However, it can very much seem that way. Individual comments like this do tell us that there are dog-loving lunatics who would certainly support such efforts, which is fucking terrifying. No, seriously. This is alarming, that there are people out there who actually view something as barbaric and needlessly violent as mauling by dog, as an acceptable population control method. Now let me be very clear about what I am saying and what I am not saying. Although it would not surprise me to learn that there was one, I don't know if there is a depopulation agenda or not. Let's just say that I am personally not convinced this is the case. I don't put it completely outside the realm of possibility, but I generally refrain from advocating for positions I cannot definitively prove. So, what are we talking about here? The concept of a depopulation agenda has garnered significant attention in recent years, often intertwined with discussions surrounding climate change, resource scarcity, and public health. Proponents of this theory argue that various global initiatives and policies endeavor to reduce the global population through means such as family planning programs, vaccination campaigns, and economic measures. Critics of the depopulation agenda hypothesis contend that such claims often lack empirical support and can be rooted in conspiracy theories that misinterpret public health initiatives or social policies. They argue that policies aimed at reducing population growth are typically grounded in humanitarian objectives rather than any malicious intent. It's also worth noting that demographic trends indicate a natural decline in birth rates across various developed nations without any explicit government intervention. And for whatever it's worth, There is a correlation between increased access to education and healthcare services for women and declining birth, which suggests a more nuanced relationship between development efforts and population dynamics. Now, let's go back to families, or rather community. As we know full well, dog culture is anathema to any sort of social cohesion or harmonious relations. This is an entire separate video essay in itself, but I personally feel that a significant contributor to the success of dog culture is precisely rooted in increasing apathy and an overall lack of empathy. In arguing with one subscriber about anti-natalism a while back, I saw the same shocking lack of empathy displayed that I often encounter from dog culture. We live in a very fragmented society. The whole dog thing simply isn't helping matters, but we should hold ourselves to a high standard, and we should really endeavor to fully understand how these different variables play a role and to what extent. Another thing I feel I should briefly point out is that the child-free movement is not anti-child. It is not an ideology. It is a lifestyle choice. And I get it. It does seem to have been hijacked by dog nutters, as with everything from dating apps to obscure philosophies. All this really means is that you're a person who, for various different reasons, is simply choosing to live your life without a child. It does not mean you automatically embrace dog culture or that you even like dogs. It does not make you anti-natalist, because a child-free person does not necessarily believe it is immoral to procreate across the board. And this is what anti-natalists believe. What the anti-natalist denounces is further propagation of existence, period. They don't say that people should opt to not have children for the sake of a career, or because they feel compelled to get a pet instead. In point of fact, I would argue that any anti-natalist who promotes pet culture is inconsistent. After all, they are creating needs that don't need to exist, being that suffering animals will be bred into existence, and quite needlessly, might I add, and all the rest of it. Dogs are certainly replacing human connections in many developed nations, and this is very alarming. It, quite frankly, extends beyond a substitution for children. As for the reasons for people having less children in general, these are much more complex. A lot of it does have to do much more so with the economy and the increasing precarity of human existence. Among other things, people find themselves increasingly isolated and alienated. Again, that is a whole separate video essay in itself. Finally, the whole pet thing is something that's ultimately external to us, although it is a major part of human culture. People will always promote the interests of people. What we really need to do is convince the world to understand that the existence and proliferation of dogs is not in our best interest. A tall order, I know, and now we're back at my frustration and depression.
When you hang yourself is when you finally quit. You say the weirdest shit, there's no value you bring. You always piss and moan about the same two things, wishing you were in the spotlight when none of us are. You're stuck on repeat. You ran inside of your car. You're such a cringe alert, it's almost an art. You need a nemesis just to stay alive. You're so fake, I bet you don't even hate dogs. No, you don't even hate. No, you don't even hate. No, you don't even hate dogs. point, no